Sally matched her mother's slow, steady pace as they made their way towards the baseball game that night. Down one block, then over and up the next. Mama squeezed Sally's hand tightly as they crept along. In the distance, the glow from the brand new stadium lights turned the air above the school a shivering atom bomb silver. It was to be the first night game in Laurel history, with enormous General Electric floodlights that the mayor had shipped in all the way from Iowa. It felt mighty good to be outside, under the stars, with the prairie whispering just a few houses away. Sally hadn't been outside much the whole last year. Mama wouldn't allow it. And now, as they inched towards the baseball field, Mama seemed to lean closer with every step, as though Sally couldn't even walk without her assistance. Which wasn't true. Sally could walk just fine. She hadn't had an episode in over a week. But Mama plodded along, and for once Sally didn't hurry her, because Sally couldn't afford to get sick, not for this. Come on now, I've been good, and I've been so quiet, and I keep calm all the time. I just need this is all. There's gonna be firecrackers and pie. Mama gave a strangled kind of a swallow. She slowed her pace further. They drew nearer to the school. Sally, you must be careful now. You must be very, very careful and very quiet, or we'll have to go home. Mama, Dr. Frank said I ought to go outside and get strong. That's what he told us. Well, he did, but I just don't know about a baseball game. They're so loud and raucous. Are you sure you'll be all right? Yes, Mama. But still, she started to tug her mama forward, just a little bit. Sally, won't you please slow down? They turned the corner, and Sally breathed out a little oh of surprise. The whole field sat in a basin of burning white light. The lamps on their pillars poured light down over the crowd. Children ran through the bright air in their Sunday best. When she saw the radiance of it all, the joy, Sally wanted to flex her fingers, slip her hand from her mother's grasp, and glide into the white air. She wanted to disappear into the shimmering delight of the evening, eat 10 pieces of pie, and drink a whole bowl of fruit punch. She wanted to escape Mama's hovering hands, the soft little prayers that her mother breathed to herself throughout the day, and most of all, Sally never wanted to see her own reflection in a bowl of bloody water ever again. Out beyond the streets of Laurel, she felt the yawning dark of the prairie abyss, waiting for her, silent. I need to get out of this town, Sally thought, not for the first time. I'll do it too. I'll get a place all by myself somewhere, and I'll fill it with 100 issues of Galaxy magazine, and I'll eat pie at 1 in the morning, and I'll go outside whenever I want. No mama, no nothing. I'll be happy. I think that's enough fresh air. We should go. Mama's voice fluttered with anxiety. Remember what the doctor said. And Sally dragged her mother the final few steps up the sidewalk and out onto the yard. They found themselves near a group of mothers. The floodlights made their dresses look stark against the night. Oh, Mrs. Lindstrom, and Sally is here. All the children nearby turned to gawk. A group of boys by the bicycle rack nodded at one another. They pointed at Sally and spoke knowingly, like she was a cow with a cracked hoof, and they had to decide what to do with her. A girl huddled up near her mother's dress and gaped, her cheek bulging with lollipop. Her blue eyes turned to star sapphires in the reflected floodlights above. The bake sale ladies smiled at Mama with pity in their eyes. Sally tried to ignore it. She bought a slice of pie for herself. It tasted like nothing. Mama took a step towards Mrs. Fox, but then someone cried, "Game's starting!" and folks began to move towards the bleachers in one mass. Sally followed after them. Her mother trailed behind her, muttering, "Well, I don't know about all this." They found their seats on the lower bleachers. Up in the highest bench, Sally spotted Archie talking with some of the boys. He looked happy enough, but she could tell he wasn't. He held his head at a slight angle, and every so often he cracked open his jaw as though he had to relieve the pressure there. Then she saw Ramsay. He sat in the center of an empty bleacher, furthest from the group, alone. She wanted to wave to him, but she couldn't do it, not with Mama there. She wasn't allowed to play with Ramsay anymore. A cheer went up from the crowd, and the town Little League team, the Laurel Outlaws, fanned out across the baseball diamond. Folks began to chant. Sally's hair lifted for a moment in the breeze, as though carried on the crowd's excitement. The team from the next town over lined up. They were batting first. Sally spotted Little Tom down near the dugout. He talked to the coach for a moment, and he took the pitcher's mound. The umpire cried, "Play ball!" Sally watched a flash of excitement move across Tom's face. Then they all heard a thump and a weird mechanical groan, and one of the bulbs exploded in a stream of sparks. All the lights went black. The people in the crowd exclaimed in surprise and worry. Sally heard the voice of Mr. Bernard, the school principal, shout something about wattage. Mother's grip tightened around Sally's hand. She whispered, "We have to go." A single light at the far end of the field tried to switch itself back on. Light spilled out of the broken pillar. It flickered and sputtered and mixed with the shadow. Sally gazed at it, half hypnotized. The light stabbed into the darkness with such violence, and it looked so unnatural, so pale and strange and cold. Somewhere in the wide open hollows of her own consciousness, the barn once again began to scream. Sally could hear the call of the whippoorwill at night, the breath of the open prairie, and an ancient wail. But no, that wasn't the barn screaming. It was Tom. The Little Leaguers had all gathered by the dugout benches, but Tom remained there on the pitcher's mound. He stood clutching his eyes, and he screamed like his lungs would burst. As he held his face, Sally could see a strange red glow through the palms of his hands. The coach started towards him. All at once, little Tom went quiet. His hands dropped, his eyes opened into two unseeing slits, and that cold light beamed out of them. And when his mouth fell open, the same crisp white light poured out of his mouth as well. Then he just slumped there, still on his feet somehow, not screaming anymore, not anything. The light ran through his corpse and kept it standing. Sally called to him, Tom, you gotta fight it!" But Tom was dead. She could tell. She could just see it. Nothing left inside of his own body but light. Sally felt the blood then. A prickle in her eye first, then a bead of liquid under her fingernail, and then the hot, oily blood ran down her face in streams. She looked down. Her fingers gushed rivulets of blood across her dress. Someone called, "What happened to him?" Tom's body crumpled onto the field. Sally tried to stand, but the familiar weakness flooded through her limbs. She fell back in her seat. Up on the bleachers, Archie whimpered and covered his ear in agony. "Breathe," Sally told herself. Darkness hovered around the edges of her vision and began to warp her sight. She tried to blink it away. She looked again for Ramsay, but he had gone. You're listening to Mystic Prairie, a Fantasia of the Old West. Episode 4, Night Games. A year has passed since the incident at the barn, and Sally Lindstrom's life has changed almost beyond recognition. but she can't entirely put aside the mystery of what happened that night, especially now that one of her friends is dead. Mama kept a bolt of fabric in the cellar next to the potatoes. She'd purchased it from the Salvation Army years before. All through Sally's childhood, Mama snipped her way through that bolt of fabric joylessly, one necessary sewing project at a time. Nearly every dress that Sally's mother owned had the same cherry pattern printed on it, and Mama tied a kerchief of that same design around her head when she did the chores. The curtains in Sally's house carried the pattern as well, along with the napkins and the placemats and the hot squares in the kitchen. Sally hated the cherries the moment she first saw that bolt of fabric all those long years ago, and now, at age 11, she knew the pattern like she knew her own closed eyelids. The fabric had a slight itchiness to it that Sally couldn't abide. She used to sneak down into the cellar and snip a yard of the cherry-patterned fabric from off the bolt. Then she'd hide those snipped pieces under her mother's mattress. It wasn't stealing, because her mother still had the pieces in the house, and in her own room even, but it meant one less horrible placemat in the kitchen, one less handkerchief or hair bow. But now, she'd finally done it. The fabric was gone. She wore the last cherry dress to Tom's funeral. Above her, the birches tossed their heads in the hot summer wind. Heat-stressed leaves flipped off the branches and cast themselves onto Tom's grave as though they deserved a service as much as anyone. Half of Laurel was in attendance. Folks sat on lawn chairs in Emmanuel Cemetery by the road in the middle of nowhere. Grave markers stood up from the earth, with the edges worn smooth. But Tom's headstone looked so sharp and new it cut Sally's eyes to see it. Sally swallowed against the lump in her throat. They used to play out at the cemetery sometimes, back before the barn. Tom seemed to like the place, so they would walk out there and crouch down and read the ancient headstones. Some of them had epitaphs in a foreign language, Swedish or German. Sally didn't know for sure, and fully half of them had Tom's last name carved into the stone. "I'll be buried out here one day when I'm real old," he announced in his cheerful, matter-of-fact way. Laurel looked shocked. Imagine knowing a thing like that. But Tom only laughed. "My people are all buried out here. But to be so comfortable about it, well, it'll happen when I'm old, in about 1,000,000 years. Little Tom grinned. He wasn't troubled. Little Tom was never troubled by much. "Tommy, you shouldn't have even been at that barn with us. You were just here to play baseball and then grow up normal and have a normal life. You were supposed to get married and become a farmer and live and die of old age in Laurel, 'cause it's a normal town, and you were just a nice, normal boy." Sally nearly choked on her own throat. It wasn't right. The preacher began to read Psalm 104. It was the psalm about happiness on the earth. For a moment, Sally thought that she had blood running down her face again, but it was a tear. Sally looked down at her dress. Cherries. Her mother had to make her a new cherry dress almost every week now. The cherries hid the blood spots for a while, until the bleeding got too bad. Sally would hardly even call the garment she wore a dress. It was really just a folded square of fabric sewn down the back, with sleeveless bands around each shoulder. They all stood and began to pray. When the service ended, Mama went to pay her respects to Tom's parents. Sally hung back a little bit behind the tent. She listened to the crowd. Folks murmured out their sympathy and their sadness to one another. But then, in amongst the quiet voices, Sally heard somebody whisper the word witchcraft. She looked up. We all saw the light in his eyes. Those children were up to no good. They were playing evil games, and Derek Sykes back last year. How did he die? This all started when she showed up, the little Mexican girl. Sally looked and looked around, but she couldn't find the speaker. Or maybe it was everyone. Maybe everyone in town thought they'd done some wicked thing. Her face burned. The ceremony ended. Folks walked back to their cars. Sally trailed after her mama. Then she felt a piece of paper pressed into her hand. She turned. Ramsey was already backing off, his eyes downcast. Mama looked nervously around for the pastor. She didn't notice Ramsey at all. Sally secreted the little fold of paper into her palm. On the drive back from the funeral, far out in the distance, Sally saw the barn, just a silhouette against the sheer blue sky. She opened the piece of paper and she read Ramsey's note. The note read, "We have to find out what happened to us, or we will die like Tom. I'll come to your house tonight, and we will go to the barn. Nobody thinks we're strong enough to sneak out. We have to investigate. Signed, Ramsey." A year before the incident at the barn, Sally and the other kids in the Mystic Prairie gang broke into the bric-a-brac shop at the edge of town. They wanted to look for Mystic Prairie artifacts. Sally led everyone around to the back of the building. Then she climbed up on an old crate and she reached her hand into the curio shop through a broken window pane. She felt for the latch. Her fingers closed around the metal mechanism and she smiled, even as the glass bit into her elbow. "I can't quite get it. The latch is stuck. And my arm is stuck now too. If I move the least little bit, I'm gonna cut myself." And then she twisted around and grinned wildly at everybody. Ramsey looked nervous. "Hurry! Anybody coming down the road is liable to catch sight of us." Sally worked her fingers around the caked rust on the latch. "Give me a little bit of time. This lock is real gummed up." Down on the ground, Archie, Little Tom, and Ramsey watched Sally with varying degrees of impatience. But Sally only paid attention to the new girl, Laurel. Laurel stood a little ways apart from the others. She gazed up, and she just examined Sally with an expression of such focused, single-minded curiosity. Sally didn't know what to make of it. They'd only just invited Laurel out that morning for the very first time. Sally told Laurel all about the Mystic Prairie, to Ramsey's dismay. He liked to keep the prairie secret for some reason, and he didn't want Laurel there. Sally could tell. Ramsey fidgeted. "Aren't you done with that window yet, Sally?" "No, I'm not. I still can't get my arm out. I might have to live here forever. You'll have to bring me food and build a little roof over my head." She heard a creak, the sound of a door swinging on its hinge, and she looked down. The back door of the curio shop stood open, with Ramsey beside it. It wasn't even locked. Ramsey spoke in the voice of a disapproving schoolmaster. "You didn't even bother trying it?" Sally started to laugh. She laughed and giggled and laughed, with her arms still stuck in the window. The door was really just unlocked this whole time? It struck her as the funniest thing in the world. "Sally, quit your giggling and come on down." No, I have to go through the window after all this hard work." She twisted her hand and got a better grip. All at once, she felt the latch give way. The window opened. Sally cackled in triumph. She hitched her foot onto a bit of brick and lifted herself over the window ledge. She dropped down to the floor. It was silent in the shop. Tubes of rolled rug gathered themselves into continents around her. Player pianos and old crank telephones stood together in a corner. A Civil War uniform watched her from the wall like the ghost of a sad Confederate. She peered around the bulk of an old mutoscope table, and she saw the stairs that led to the second floor. She felt Ramsey and the others come up behind her. They spoke in hushed tones. "I don't know about this," Ramsey said. Sally tried to settle him. "It's fine. Nobody's here. Sam might come back and walk in on us. The shop's closed. Sam always takes Monday off." "Well, let's go upstairs at least." It'll be easier to hide up there, just in case." Sally nodded. Ramsey went to the stairs. He took the steps 2 at a time. Laurel glided after him, cat slipper silent. The other children followed one by one. The second floor contained bigger, rougher things. An old ship's lady leaned against a wall, so far from the ocean that Sally couldn't credit it. She touched the carved eyes of the statue. Sally thought, "You've seen 2 kinds of ocean, water and grass." "Look at that!" Laurel pointed to the skeletal silhouette of a prairie schooner, which loomed above the collection. "My goodness, how on earth did they get it up the stairs?" Sally turned slowly to take in the whole room. "Do you think there's some version of this place out on the Mystic Prairie? There's got to be some kind of a curio shop out there." Little Tom ran his hand over a bureau covered in beeswax polish. He fiddled with one of the drawer pulls. "Yeah, I bet there is a place like this out there. What do you guys think is in it? Maybe they've got B-29s in the curio shop out on the Mystic Prairie." "Yes," Sally said. "That's wonderful. That's amazing." Sally saw Laurel lock eyes on her again, with that same fixed, fascinated stare. Oh, Sally thought, she's staring like that because she's interested in the game. She's more interested than anybody I've ever seen. She's even more interested than Ramsey. "I was wondering," Laurel asked quietly, "how do you all go to visit the Mystic Prairie? Is there a door?" Ramsey looked annoyed. He didn't like how easily Laurel joined in their play. "Well, you don't get in at all. We get in." Sally glared at him. "Nobody gets in, because we never decided how we get in." Ramsey shook his head. "Well, I made up my mind. Shadows are the doorway. You find the darkest shadow in a room, and then the darkness lets you into the prairie." "We didn't decide that. You just decided that," Sally bellowed. Sally skipped up to an old standing mirror. She turned to the others. "Mirrors are 1,000 times better than shadows. Look at this. It's as tall as any of us, so we could just walk right through. So what, any mirror just lets you in?" "Well, no, not just any mirror. When you hold 2 mirrors facing each other, that's when you open a door. The prairie appears in the repeating reflections." "Now wait a minute," Archie said. "I thought it was right turns. You walk down a street and you make 7 right turns in a row." Then little Tom piped up. "I like the flickering light idea we had, with candles in a circle. Do you fellas remember that idea? You set up a circle of candles and then blow the candles out one by one, and when you blow out the last candle, you end up on the Mystic Prairie." Laurel smiled. "It sounds like you all have different doors to the prairie then. I wonder what my door might be." Right the instant that Laurel spoke those words, Sally saw the cavalry saber. It stood in an umbrella stand, in amongst a forest of old walking sticks. The other kids continued to argue about this door or that door, or which door was the best, but Sally barely listened. She stared at the sword, transfixed. The saber had a green stone in the pommel, set loose like it had been added years later. Sally figured the rock for a topaz. It was a kind of pale, sickly green, like the color of the sky before a tornado, with an unpolished edge, rusty and dark. A cavalry uniform hung above the sword. The uniform had rusted speckles across the front. Blood, Sally thought. Sally had this strange feeling that the blood came from her somehow. The world dropped away. A faint howling filled her ears. Sally ran up and grabbed the sword. "Everyone, look! This sword is important! This sword comes from the Mystic Prairie!" And then Sally blinked awake. A year had gone by, just a year, and Laurel was gone, and little Tom was dead. And Sally lay in bed in her room, and she felt that familiar weak sensation in her arms and legs. Ramsey would arrive for their secret midnight meeting soon, she figured. She waited for some sign of him. She watched the shadow of her bedroom curtain swell and then sag in the night air. A huge, powder-colored moon hung right in the center of the window pane, and the curtain seemed almost to wrap itself around the moon. The memory of that day at the bric-a-brac shop, it felt important somehow. Little Tom wanted a path of flickering candles to lead him into the prairie. Flickering light, she thought. A doorway made of flickering light. I wonder what really happened at the baseball game. She heard a quiet tap, tap, tap at her window. Sally, I'm here. Ramsey's voice floated up to her from the ground below. He's gonna break my darn window with those pebbles. Sally marched right down the stairs and opened the door. Howdy. Ramsey's face dissolved into shock. Sally, aren't you worried your mama might hear you? She's working nights now, so she can be with me more during the day. She won't be home for hours. Oh. Ramsey looked bamboozled for a moment more. Then he shifted his expression into one of lordly acceptance, like he had never been surprised a day in his life. Ramsey held a huge picnic basket in both hands, and for some reason the basket made him look even more absurd. Sally started to grin. It felt so good to see his dumb, princely face and his smug mouth. What are you smiling at, Sally? Ramsey said in a fretful voice. He gripped the basket handle tighter. You! I'm glad to see you. What you got in there? Nothing. Never mind the basket. It doesn't concern you. Sure it doesn't. Well, let's go. Are you gonna be okay with the walk? Yes, we'll go slow and take it easy. They slipped out the door and down the moon-soaked streets of Laurel. They walked past houses and churches, past the bric-a-brac shop, and then out onto the prairie. Sally tried not to let her heart sing at the sight of the open fields. Each individual blade of grass carried a white dab of moonlight at the tip of it, and the sparkling ocean of moongrass spread in front of her forever and ever. She forced herself to walk slowly and not leap forward. It wouldn't do to risk an episode. And she tried to make her heart grow still, even when she heard the wind out in the empty fields. They didn't speak, not for a long time. All the same, Sally felt Ramsey side-eyeing her. You're quiet, Sally. Suppose so, but you seem you're so different. Sally didn't know quite what to say back. Well, you're exactly the same. I'm not. Well, I mean, I am, but... Yeah, Sally said, a bit wistfully. I know exactly what you mean. They walked along in silence. You're just so much quieter is all. You used to be such a little chatterbox. You're still not going to tell me what you got in that basket? I told you not to concern yourself. It's none of your business. For one instant, Sally could see it, clear as day in her mind's eye. She could see what she would have done back before the barn. She'd full-body tackle Ramsey and grab the basket. She would just tease him with it until he got so steamed he'd start to stomp back home. Then she'd laugh and give him the basket without opening it at all. But the instant Sally saw the whole scene play out in her head, she realized that she didn't really want to do that, sick or well. She just wasn't quite that person anymore. Well, all right, I guess. It's your basket. If you want to drag a huge mysterious basket around with you everywhere, well, then you can go ahead and do it, I guess. What's wrong with you? Ramsey shouted. He sounded furious with her all of a sudden. What? Why are you acting like that? What's wrong with you? You're acting like you don't care. He turned, and his face twisted in rage. Ramsey's anger seemed to come from nowhere, and Sally felt almost dizzy trying to understand it. What do you mean? You sound like you don't care about anything. You're acting different. I missed you so bad, and now you're acting strange. I'm not trying to act any different. What do you want me to do? I don't know. Ramsey wailed into the night. His jaw was trembling, and a tear slid down his face. I just really wanted to see you, Sally. And Mother wouldn't let me see anybody, except Dr. Blanc, for so long. And I felt so disgusting, like some kind of worm. Ramsey, I'm right here. I'm here now. No, you're not. You're not the Sally I used to know. Ramsey gave one stifled sob, and then he went quiet. "Yes, I am." But Ramsey didn't answer. The moon rose higher in the sky above them, and it grew smaller and smaller as it climbed until it sat in the middle of the night. Sally gazed out across the fields. "Do you ever think Laurel might still be out there? Like she ran out into the prairie and just started a new life, maybe?" "Don't be stupid," Ramsey said. He hiccuped. "She went crazy, and she died. We don't know that. Well, I do. You know what she did to my pop. There's no coming back from that. Why can't you just think reasonably?" Sally wheeled around to face Ramsey. Her own anger shocked her almost as much as his own. "Think reasonably? Like you? Maybe I want to have a little hope." Ramsey stared at her. "Sally, your eye. There's blood." Sally wiped her face. Then she pointed. "We're at the barn." Sally and Ramsey left the road. They made their way towards the barn in silence. The grass beneath their feet whispered to itself with every step. "Well, now we're just quiet and sad as two little ghosts," Sally thought. She imagined Laurel gliding through the same grass, an abandoned child out in the fields, maybe dead in a spirit, or maybe alive. In her heart, Sally couldn't believe that Laurel had killed Ramsey's father, but she also knew she couldn't say that to Ramsey. The barn loomed above them. Sally saw the same wind-chewed walls, the same collapsed roof, and she half expected that old fear to hit her. She still had nightmares about the barn sometimes. She always woke up sick and bleeding afterwards. But the moon dumped its light all over everything, and it made the barn look normal. Not a frightening barn, not a barn full of screams and light, just a barn. The broken Dutch door threw moon shadows across the ground. They crept inside. Ramsey reached into his mysterious basket and he pulled out a flashlight. He flicked it on. And only then did Sally notice that everything inside the barn felt wrong. Nothing looked so very different, but she had the strangest sensation as she stood there in the dark, as though there were two barns layered on top of one another, and they twisted and fell towards one another across some endless night sky. Far above her head, or beneath her feet, she sensed the two barns loop and layer into one another, a nautilus full of ocean echoes. Sally stood somehow in between the both of them, and she felt them twist and twist. She shook her head. "I don't like this, Ramsey. It feels real strange in here, like the air is broken around us. Do you hear that? Your voice is echoing." Ramsey was right. The barn echoed like an empty church. He pointed, and look there. A patch of long grass grew up from the center of the barn's dirt floor. The grass was inky jet black. "I've seen this grass before, Ramsey. All over." "You've seen it before?" Sally swallowed. "It started at the hospital. I see grass like this whenever I look into any kind of mirror. I just see this whole horizon of black grass that runs along right across my reflection." Ramsey swallowed hard. "I've seen it too. I see it mostly at night. Why, it's almost like it's following me around. It's in the shadows. Sometimes I see it in the corner of my room. What do you think it means?" But Ramsey didn't say anything else. He just knelt there and he examined the grass. Sally went to the door. Twisted barn slats and bent bits of wood littered the ground outside. The whole place was a mess. Sally hadn't seen any of this debris before. It looked like the barn had exploded right there, but the barn was still intact. She bent down and picked up one of the boards. The blank moonlight made every color and texture look the same. But as soon as she touched it, Sally shuddered at the feel of it against her palm. It wasn't wood at all. It was glass. The glass gleamed dimly as she turned it in her hands. It had the texture of wood grain. Suddenly the board vibrated. It shivered like a frightened animal. Ramsey, come here and look at this. Ramsey walked out to join her. Sally handed him the board. He jumped the moment the glass touched his fingers and nearly dropped it. It's almost trembling. Do you feel it? Like it's alive. Ramsey, I think I understand now. Sally, your eye is bleeding again. Never mind that. I just realized something. That night at the barn, I thought we failed. I thought we didn't get through to the Mystic Prairie. But Ramsey, what if we did? Sally, I think we made it happen. I think we opened a door to the prairie. The black grass I'm seeing in the mirror, that's my door. My door is mirrors. Your door is in shadows. Sally dashed back into the barn. Ramsey trailed after. Sally, both your eyes are bleeding now. She started to shuffle her hands through the debris. You wanted darkness to make a door. Little Tom wanted flickering lights to make a door. Archie wanted to take 7 right turns down the street, and that would open up his door to the Mystic Prairie. We all wanted different doors, and so I think we all got different doors. And you know what I wanted. Sally felt her hand hit upon something smooth. I wanted mirrors. She pulled the object out of the junk. It was Laurel's mirror that she held in her hand, a looking glass with a fleur-de-lis on the back. 2 mirrors facing one another. Remember, Ramsey? We don't have a second mirror. And Sally, I don't know. Tommy saw all those flickering stadium lights and he died right away. We saw him fill with light. It's dangerous. Sally felt her heart fill with anger. But then she stopped and she looked hard at Ramsey. She really noticed for the first time the odd, jutting shadows beneath his cheeks and the way he stared at her, tense, arms taut, with mouse-like fear in his eyes. She took a deep breath. You need to leave. I'm going to do this on my own. Ramsey stared at her. You never used to kick me to the side like that. Listen, I'm a whole lot smarter than you, Sally. We both know it. Not like you, always rushing here and rushing there and getting into trouble. You need me here. They stared at each other. Ramsey didn't leave. If we want to open a door right now, we do have another mirror. The top of the old music box you brought here when we first found this barn. It's in our pile of treasure. Ramsey thought for a moment. All right. He went to fetch the music box while Sally examined the reflection in the mirror. She tipped it back and forth. She didn't see the line of black grass this time, just a single star balanced right in the center of the looking glass as the mirror reflected the sky through the collapsed roof above. Ramsey returned with the music box. Sally sat on the floor. Hold the music box mirror behind my head. She lifted up the fleur-de-lis looking glass, and Ramsey angled the music box over her shoulder. No, Ramsey, hold it down a little bit. No, tip it down more. Yeah, and then to the left. And then suddenly, the reflection of Sally's face accordioned out into infinity as the 2 mirrors captured one another. The repeating images seemed to go on forever, and 6 repetitions deep, she saw a twinkling sliver of black grass. Sally turned the mirror slightly to center the image. Full daylight erupted into the barn. Through the mirror, they saw a sweep of open blue sky and a sunlit prairie stretching on and on. They stared. Sally barely breathed. Neither of them said a word. I'm going to put my finger through. Sally's mouth filled with hot blood. She spit. No, we're not putting any fingers in. We should leave. Ramsey, look at this. We can't go yet. You bled a whole river down your nightgown. Sally tugged at the front of her dress. He was right. She suddenly felt weak. She could hear a gush of blood pumping somewhere deep in her ear. But she didn't want to tell Ramsey yet. Ramsey, we just opened a door to the Mystic Prairie. We've got to put something through before we go. Here. Ramsey reached into his pocket and he pulled out 1/2 of a Valamilk candy cup. You still eat those? Don't you throw up all the time? Hush, Ramsey said. He handed Sally the Valamilk. Sally pushed the candy against the mirror. The mirror's surface bent for just a moment, then it gave way. The broken Valomilk slid into the reflection and disappeared. Will you look at that? It went in. Look. And then, right before their eyes, another object bubbled up from out of the mirror. It looked like the same piece of Valomilk. It fell to the floor. Look at that, Ramsay. It sent the candy back. That's not my Valomilk. There's something wrong with it. Is there? Let me see. Don't touch it. But Sally grabbed it anyway. The Valomilk pressed against her hand, heavy, far too heavy, and cold. It wasn't chocolate at all. It looked darker, felt smoother. And when her shadow fell over it, she saw that a dim white light emanated out of the fracture in the candy coating. It is different. She felt so sleepy all of a sudden. I think this Valomilk is from the prairie. I think it wanted to trade. Ramsay's eyes widened. He dropped the music box. The image of the Mystic Prairie disappeared from Sally's mirror. Ramsay crouched down, shuddering. Ramsay? Sally said. What's wrong? Ramsay choked. Then he spit something out onto the ground. A pale, wobbling substance. It trembled in the dirt like pudding. Ugh, Ramsay, are you okay? What is that stuff? Sally, you know I get sick too. He steadied himself. Then he looked her dead in the eye. If you want something special, you have to give something special. Ramsay began to chuckle weakly. Then he bent down and retched again. We gotta go, Sally. We gotta go home. You're right. Don't forget your basket. My basket! And Ramsay scooped up the basket like it was the most precious thing on earth. They walked out of the barn together. Mystic Prairie is a third Cosmonaut production written and produced by McKinley Baker and Katherine Jameson, performed by Katherine Jameson, and with music by the same, editing by McKinley Baker. If you like what you've heard and you want to support us, please help us get the word out and recommend this podcast to your friends. Thanks for listening.